Sekeres Price for Wednesday, February 7th, 2024, coming to you from the Go-Go Sports Studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver, where the Sekeres Price rate is back. Some blackout dates apply based on availability, but if you're looking for a local getaway, Valentine's Day, game night, call the wall, 604-331-1000. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Grace Sass hitting switches, conducting things alongside intern Madison Buckingham. We got a big show planned for you, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
And Applewood Kia in Surrey wants to get you into the electric frame of mind. How about the 2024 Kia Niro EV and the EV6 coming with a complimentary EV charger or a complimentary set of winter tires, whatever you have in mind for this particular Kia Niro. Go check it out, Applewood Kia in Surrey. It's all good at Applewood.
Poll question today asking you, who scares you most? Edmonton, Vegas, or nobody? You can vote at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube. This after the Vancouver Canucks forge a 3-2 victory in Carolina against the Hurricanes, and then the nightcap. And I sure hope people stuck around for Oilers in Vegas and
so
Golden
too.
Knights. That was a
good hockey
hell
game.
of a hockey game from Sin City. More on that in a second. Let's get to the poll. Here's where I'm at. I voted nobody, just because it's a little early for me right now. I want to see where these teams are at in 32 games. I want to see where the injury situation is and whether the Vancouver Canucks can continue with this competitive edge that they have. We've heard Coach talk recently about, players buying into their press clippings. So I think he understands one of the next hurdles is that this team doesn't get too big for its britches. For the moment, it looks like it's going to be competitive in the Western Conference and in the Pacific Division to finish first. So that is something that I think Tocchet and the club can ride. But I would be worried a little bit about the foot off the gas for a team that knows it's going to the playoffs and really hasn't been through any of this before.
Yeah, it is a little bit frightening to look at the gauntlet that is in the Pacific Division right now. I think everybody's a little bit imperfect. The Vegas Golden Knights have had injury issues, so I think you do need to buy some time there a little bit to be fully afraid of them. So I'm not voting them in the poll question. The Oilers scare me currently, but I need Stuart Skinner to show me over a much bigger sample size that he can be this kind of a goaltender, and especially come playoff time. And ultimately, the Oilers have had two faces this season. And granted, the coaching change, may be a big part of it, but they've got structure right now. Heck, Darnell Nurse is looking like a decent defensive defenseman right now. Things like that are changing. So, if the Oilers look like this right till the end of the season, that would scare me.
Yeah. I think if you force me to answer one of those two teams, I would go with Edmonton, just because, and we've talked about it many times before. Look, we've seen repeat Stanley Cup champions in the cap era now, Pittsburgh and Tampa, and of course, Rutherford and Alvina were part of that Pittsburgh club. But the long history of the National Hockey League, stars of the order of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl typically win Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
And so is this the year for Edmonton? Well, they've got to get over the Vegas hurdle because they have been blocking these two great Oilers stars from even getting to a cup final. They haven't got there yet, but yeah, at some point I would suspect that McDavid and Draisaitl break out. All right, let's get into it. 3-2 victory at Carolina, 73 points now, first in the National Hockey League, clear of the Boston Bruins, who lose to Andrei Kuzmenko and the Calgary Flames. More on him in a second. So 2 up on Boston and 5 up on Dallas and Colorado, and all of these teams have played 50 games, so that's very tidy for you as well. No more having to look at games in hand, or at least not for today. 14 consecutive hockey games with a point for the Vancouver Canucks, Blake. You've done the math over how many points the Oilers actually made up on Vancouver during their 16-game winning streak, and the answer is
5. 17 games. They both have played 17 games since the last Oiler loss, December the 19th. So it's actually a really easy equation to look at. 16-1 now for Edmonton since then. Canucks 12-2-3 since then. So you rip off an almost historic
right
run of play for a long stretch too.
Mhm.
And you've got a 5-point cushion to show for
Yeah.
it.
Well, and I'll do you one better. Over the last 10, they haven't picked up a single point.
Yeah.
9-1 for the Oilers, 18 points. 8-0-2 for the Vancouver Canucks for 18 points. Also loved what Tocchet had to say. He was a member of that 92-93 Penguins team. I hate it when guys say, oh, I hope they break our record. Nah, he's a competitive son of a gun. He didn't want them to break their record. Of course, those Penguins teams could play 2 ties, right? They had overtime then, but you could. And then I also like what Butch Goring said of his Islanders team, that dynastic Islanders team in the 80s about, well, we ran off 15 in a row and they didn't get overtime, right?
Yeah, it is.
So it's they were pursuing a streak with an asterisk based on the way the NHL is now formatted, with winners in each and every game.
It is a tough comparison to make historically because you have a winner every night. So it's very different. What surprised me looking at that all-time list is the Columbus Blue Jackets. I don't remember them ripping off 16 wins in a row in 2016-17. Is
that the Torts era?
Yeah, I think it might have been.
Okay.
I
don't either, but of course I don't remember very much Columbus Blue Jackets. They have not been a memorable franchise or story. Let's get to our top story today, and it's brought to you by Mr. Lube. Elias Lindholm, his Vancouver Canucks debut, 2 goals, both net front tip-ins, and the first one is going well wide. So that's an extraordinary goal to score. And against his old team, of course, not his most recent team, the Calgary Flames, but the team that drafted him and brought him into the National Hockey League, like immediately after taking him, 5th overall in 2013. So, we talked to Frank Corrado yesterday about his role as the net front power play guy, and wow, instant dividends paid.
I hope that he didn't have his A game because he was in Raleigh. I hope that's just his game. But it probably made things a lot more comfortable for him. And he was, I thought he was good in every facet, honestly, from blocking shots to just reducing gaps. Like there wasn't much lacking in his game. And you just think about the addition and subtraction. And I know Kuzmenko had an okay game for the Flames and he scored and all that is true. But for the most part, most nights as a Canuck this year, he was a black hole somewhere in the lineup, oftentimes alongside your best player in Elias Pettersson, to just know there's no black hole there, that you're getting a complete player alongside Pettersson. I mean, it's honestly, if you're a Vancouver Canuck fan right now, you're exhaling, you're thinking, okay, huge item off the to-do list.
And we're going to hear from Elias Lindholm here in a second. He led all Vancouver Canucks with 3 block shots and went 50% in the face-off circle.
And that's our top story, brought to you by Mr. Lube. It's 100% Canadian. It was started in Edmonton by a father and son team. So I wonder if the son called his dad Mr. Lube. I mean, that would seem appropriate. It's a warranty-approved oil change. And, of course, they also do tires and tire sales with no appointment needed. So you always just drive up to Mr. Lube. 16 locations, 1 near you. Go to mrlube.com.
Here's the new guy wearing number 23 on his first goal as a Vancouver Canuck.
No, it was obviously a little relief. Obviously playing with there's a lot of good players on this team, and we play well today, and obviously it was a nice shot by Huggy there, and obviously got a piece of it. So it was nice to see it going.
I'm always amazed at how hockey player gets traded to a new team and instantly has the nicknames down.
Yeah,
Huggy.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think he's giving Huggy a little too much credit there. I'm not sure it was a nice shot. It was going wide, but he got a stick on it, and it goes in the net. 2 assists for Hughes, 2 assists for Brock Besser in this game. Let's hear more from Elias Lindholm because, yeah, he was a little bit nervous in his first game as a Vancouver Canuck.
I felt pretty good. Obviously kind of nervous before the game. A lot of new things, and but I felt pretty good. I thought that we played pretty good, and obviously it was a tight game, playoff-like game. They're a good team. We're a good team, so not a lot of room out there, but we stuck with it and got the 2 points. That's all that matters.
Playoff-like game, I think is a good encapsulation of what we saw in Raleigh. The shots 24-19 for the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, they do a fantastic job, Carolina does, at repressing opponent shots. They're best in the National Hockey League at that. A lot of it has to do with the style of play that they employ under head coach Rod Brindamore of Campbell River. Of course, they are forever pressuring the puck, and that can sometimes create, not the cleanest or tidiest hockey. It's hard to make those crisp passes when you've got Hurricanes all over you.
And they were going to push back because they were outshot 13-8 in the first period. And so you knew they were getting a talking to from Brindamore that they were going to come out better in the final 40, and they did.
Well, and of course, the Canucks didn't put a whole lot of pucks on net.
No.
After that.
But for Lindholm too, I think he's nervous because you don't want to leave things lingering with a new team. Like, you're always going to have a slump. You're going to have a 5-game drought where you don't score a goal. You just don't want that out of the chute with the new club. You don't want that hanging over you. So I think it allows you to exhale as a player and to know that you got all that ice time as well, and played in all multiple situations. I think you exhale and think, okay, I'm trusted here. I had a good game, and now I can just be me.
And in terms of a playoff game, I mean, we wonder about the All-Star hangover. That wasn't there. The Canucks with chances galore in the first period. The massive hit from Nikita Zadorov on former Canuck Jalen Chatfield, the shorthanded goal after the Canucks make a hash of that opening power play. You wonder what Lindholm was thinking on that first power play. Like, guys, can we just get possession here?
Yeah.
I'm trying to stand my post in front of the net. How about Vancouver blocking 4 shots in the final 90 seconds? Lindholm is on that list, as is Elias Pettersson, Teddy Bluger, Dakota Joshua. They protect the lead. They get out of there with 2 points, do not need to go beyond regulation. And Thatcher Demko ties Dan Cloutier a franchise record with his 9th straight victory.
Today, I believe, Canucks Army had it, the acquisition anniversary of Dan Cloutier. So he's all over Canucks history now. And, that's just an unbelievable stat. I don't know that it was Demko's, masterpiece.
Right.
But sometimes playoff hockey is going to be like that, where it's a muddy game for a little bit, and then you have to face 2 glorious chances out of nowhere that you haven't seen in 20 minutes, and you got to be at your best. And again, we're going to be reminded about a lot of things like that, the nuances of playoff hockey when the Canucks get there this season. We haven't had a whole lot of it to analyze in the last 10 years. And little things like that about how, as a goaltender, you got to be patient. You got to be ready for the chances that just spring up. And sometimes they're glorious chances. But Demko's passing all those tests right now, and the Canucks just keep on winning on the road, hostile atmospheres, and they're going to face it again on Thursday versus the Bruins.
We're on to Boston. Is it a Stanley Cup preview, Blake Price?
So last night, in between the 2 games, promos coming on because it's a televised game again nationally on that day, I believe, and that's how they're billing it.
Yeah. 20 block shots on the night for the Vancouver Canucks. That is playoff hockey. When Lindholm talks about new things, now part of that could be playing some right wing, although he took more faceoffs than Elias Pettersson. That may also well be the exacting specific way that Rick Tocchet wants these Vancouver Canucks to play. It's going to be interesting to hear more from pretty good talker too, like a guy who's is accustomed to being a frontline player and being out there and in a Canadian market as well. Speaking of Canadian markets, the Calgary Flames with a 4-1 victory over the Boston Bruins in Boston. And it takes our old friend Andrei Kuzmenko all of 4 minutes and 20 seconds to get his first goal as a Calgary Flame. Now, I always thought 420 a number more associated with Vancouver than Calgary, but nobody tell Nikita Trampkin that his fellow Russian was scoring at 420. One of the things, and we talked about it going into the trade because Kuzmenko was so clearly on the block. We talked about it after the trade. And really, I sense that Canuck Nation has kind of got a consensus, if not unanimous on this. Andrei Kuzmenko may very well go out and be a very productive hockey player for the Calgary Flames. And it just wasn't going to happen here. And so that's okay. And if the Flames happen to win something in this trade because Kuzmenko fits that Ryan Huska system better in Southern Alberta, so be it. Wasn't going to happen here.
And Huberdeau wasn't setting up Kuzmenko all night, but Huberdeau seemed to have what some are saying might be his best game ever as a Flame. If it livens up their forward set, I wouldn't be surprised if Kuzmenko's a big part of that. You have to be careful if you're a Canuck fan of holding that candle for Kuzmenko too much, because if he's helping the Flames get back into a playoff race, it means that you can't get Tanev. They're probably not trading Chris Tanev.
Oh, I don't know.
If they're pushing towards the playoffs.
With Hanifin being a UFA as well, and there seems to be a little movement on that file. I do wonder. Look,
you think they deal Tanev if they're 1 point out of a playoff berth? I don't know.
I think they have to move either Hanifin or a Tanev before losing them for nothing to be the second wild card.
I mean,
if not both, Blake. I think you're Craig Conroy there. Your first, it's your first year on the job. You've got some leash. You've got some license.
I wholeheartedly agree that you should do that. But the problem with Conroy is he's pulled off a deal in which he thinks he's done pretty well with this Kuzmenko Lindholm trade.
Oh, he has to know he's not a better team. Lindholm for Kuzmenko?
No, but going forward, it gives him assets going forward. He's stocked the cupboards. He's got picks, all that sort of stuff. He's very happy with the trade, and I think he has reason to be pleased with the trade, given Lindholm was probably not re-signing.
Mm-hmm.
But he makes that trade, and he's still in the thick of things and winning hockey games. I think he might think, oh my gosh, I've had my cake and I've eaten it too. So we'll see. I still think I had the realization here as I dreamt of the playoffs and covering the playoffs again. I mean, the Canucks Canucks fans could have their cake and eat it too as well in terms of playoff matchups. I don't know that there's a bad second round matchup for the Canucks right now, because it'll probably be against the Oilers or the Golden Knights, both of which I think are pretty tantalizing storylines. And there's still a possibility they face the Kraken in the opening round.
Yeah.
Like, they're right there. They need to get a little bit hot. I think they need a bit of a hot streak, a 7-3 in their last 10 kind of hot streak.
Yeah.
But Canucks versus Kraken in the first round after all this time of waiting, I mean, that'd be a lot of fun.
And the Canucks are down in Seattle on February 22nd to take on the Kraken. I don't know. We'll see about Seattle. I mean, Decourt did a nice job for them there for a while, but you wonder.
They've got holes.
They have the goods. We should also mention that Lindholm, on top of his work as the net front power play guy, did feature as a penalty killer for the Vancouver Canucks. We thought that would be the case as well. 50 seconds. So not the most used guy, but was out there for the first shorthanded shift and wound up settling in with Nils Oman. So there you have the lefty-righty duo to take the face-offs. Of course, Bluger and Joshua have been a penalty-killing duo for the Canucks all season. Pettersson, Mikheyev, like suddenly, I was thinking, Blake, all the time we spent early in the season wondering about that penalty kill because it was so historically bad last year, and you kind of, your cup runneth over here with penalty killing forwards.
By the way, that
got a lot of options.
That Bluger line, great again last night offensively. Like, they should have had 2 or 3.
Oh, absolutely.
So if that's what a quiet night on the score sheet looks like for them, then I think you take that every day of the week.
Yeah, and we talk about the exacting way that Rick Tocchet wants the Vancouver Canucks to play, and just all the astonishing stats about this team this season. Did you see what Mike Kelly tweeted yesterday?
What, the rush chances?
Yeah. The Vancouver Canucks tied for first in the league in goals, 32nd last in rush chances.
So the deeper dive, apparently, when you do the deeper dive on that, is that the third, amongst the low quantity, let's say just for the sake of ease, they've got 100 chances, and the teams below them in the top 10 have got 300 rush chances. Apparently, because of the structure and the way that the Canucks play, the ratio of high danger rushes to low danger rushes favors the Canucks when they get the chance. And just anecdotally within yourself, ask yourself how many 2-on-1s and breakaways the Canucks get. They don't get many.
No. Well, and that's because they're playing below the puck.
Yeah.
Right? They're not cheating. They're not blowing zones.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that's got to please Tocchet and the coaching staff the most, is that the team has heeded the word that if you take care of your business on the defensive side of the puck from the center line to your goal line, you're going to get opportunities in the offensive zone, it just may not necessarily be off the rush, that you methodically are going to transport that puck into enemy territory. They're a big chip and chase team. Get in on the forecheck, regain possession, and score your goals that way.
It's, as you see, there was 239 rush chances. And there's really highly skilled team. They've got 6 all-stars, for heaven's sake. So, when they get those opportunities, they've probably got a better chance than a lot of other teams of closing those opportunities, because they're a highly skilled offensive team.
And they don't need the chances because they're going to play with the puck so often in the offensive zone
and
via the forecheck and a good structured system that excels in regaining possession after it's been dumped or chipped in.
H8N on YouTube is saying, just watch McJesus and Leon cheat big time last night. It's unbelievable, the Oilers. Now, they were pretty stout defensively. I'll give them credit for that. But you're right. I mean, the big names, the big 4 on the Oilers are always poised to explode. The chances they get, unbelievable.
But honestly, Blake, if I had a frontline player with Connor McDavid's speed, I'd be okay with that too. That you've got to coach to your talent to some degree. And it's great to have a system, but the essence of coaching is understanding what you have and then framing a structure or a system around the specific talent. Edmonton has a magnificent player there who just skates like the wind and can stick handle and do things at high speed that I don't think we've ever seen before.
Like if Pettersson had McDavid's wheels, he would get the same thing afforded to him, so.
Yeah, spot on. I want to bring up a name for you because he was talked about on TSN Insider Trading last night. I don't believe there has been much talk about this player in Vancouver, but Pierre LeBrun reported that the Buffalo Sabres are going to have a chat with Eric Johnson. Uber veteran.
Yeah.
Be 36 years old in March. Unrestricted free agent to be. Right shot defenseman. Making 3.25, but I would suspect there's a retention possibility there. Now, he's not an offensive guy in the least, just the 3 goals and 3 points in 42 games. He's playing 14 minutes a night for the Buffalo Sabres. I bring the name up, Blake, just because when you take a look at the profile defensemen they went out to get this past summer, Carson Soucy, Ian Cole, bigger guys who could play the right side. In the case of Cole, a Stanley Cup champion, right? And of course, that extended to Teddy Bluger and some of the other additions. LeBron reporting they're going to have a conversation, the Sabres, with his agent and see if he does want to be traded.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a huge playoff veteran, 55 playoff games in his career, so he's been there, done that. I mean, that's not a whole lot. He played on some bad St. Louis teams and then into, but he did win with Colorado. Oh, he was with Colorado, but he was also often injured is the problem. But if it's not costing you much as your eighth guy, by all means.
That's it. I mean, Tuesday we talked about, all-in trades that you can make and some of the bigger fish, and we've talked about Tanev and Vetrano and some others that are going to cost you a significant return. But if we're starting to look at depth pieces, that's an interesting name because he's well known. He's known as a locker room leader type. Again, the Cup pedigree and everything like that. So, you've got to balance those sorts of considerations.
And again,
against guys like Nick Seeler, who don't really have that on their resume.
I've been yelling this nonstop. If you're planning on going 3 rounds, minimum, if not 4,
right?
Like you're getting to the 8th guy. He's playing 4 games.
And if you're looking at the you don't want to have to play the lefties on the right side. Tocchet and Foote have shown they don't love that. And so I think you're looking at a right shot defenseman.
Yeah.
If you are looking at a depth piece for the Canucks at the deadline. I wanted to get to this as well, continuing our discussion yesterday with regards to these 4 NHLers and former Canadian World Junior players who are facing sexual assault charges in London. Ian Kennedy of the Hockey News tweeting, Odds that the NHL was able to conclude if the teams who signed these players knew of the sexual assault and did nothing. The NHL doesn't like to tell us about the investigations it undertakes or doesn't undertake. It has said we are doing a larger scale investigation of the incident in London, Ontario. Ian wonders, you don't get cap relief for a player in the assistance program, but alleged sexual predators helped your cap situation?
Yeah, there's an incongruency there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want people to be forthcoming and take part in the honesty program here,
right?
Like it's that is a weird one.
And I know that the players, under guidance from their attorneys, have shared very little, if anything, with their member clubs. But if you're a member club, does that not in and of itself trouble you?
But here's the thing. If you're a person capable of doing that and the club is investigating you, are you inclined to tell them every dirty detail of that? It's your employer.
Oh, your lawyer has told you to shut up, and
or lie or whatever. It's different when the cops are showing up, right? Then you feel a little bit more intimidated to make sure that that you're coughing up the truths.
Then there's this Colorado Avalanche defenseman Cale Makar, who was a member of that 2018 World Junior team, was asked about everything that's happening on that file. This was his response. It's tough. I've been told not to comment on that ongoing investigation. I've been straightforward from the start. I wasn't there. It was a very fortunate bounce to not obviously be a part of something like that. I'm just going to leave it to the people who are handling the work right now. I can't stress enough that I wasn't a part of it. It was a very fortunate bounce to not obviously be part of something.
Was he not at the? There's a few players that weren't even at the golf tournament.
Yeah, who were?
Was he one of them?
This was a summer celebration.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah,
I didn't hear them. I've only seen them written, so I don't know the entirety of the context. Jay Fresh Hockey says an insane quote on two levels. Number one, how could you think it's a good idea to say, "Yeah, I'm lucky I wasn't at the event, so nobody would suspect that I was involved"? Two, how do you let a hockey cliche slip out in a context where you should be picking your words so very carefully? And he's not the only one who has taken a look at this and went,
It's the wrong tone, but I get what he's saying. He's saying I don't have to face the questions because I wasn't even there. Like he's got nothing that he can add if he wasn't there. So I get where he's coming. The turn of phrase puts a more flippant tone to it. I don't think that's what he meant, but yeah, I can understand how it reads like that a little bit.
Okay, back on the Canucks for a second here. Are you anticipating a fiery game in Boston?
Well, if I didn't see what I just saw, I would have said no. But the Bruins on home ice embarrassed by the Flames, I think they're going to have. I mean, gosh, don't they almost want to bring up 2011? Don't they almost want to say, listen, this team is going to be trying to exercise demons for I mean, you build this game up if you're the coach, and I think you might want to manufacture some rivalry here to try to smelling salt your team a little bit here because they were not good last night.
And honestly, when I think back on this Canucks schedule, Blake, we haven't seen a lot of fiery, chippy games, have we?
No. They've survived the ones that have reared their heads.
But we haven't seen sort of an all heck breaks loose game, have we?
Honestly, the first one that comes to my mind is Liam O'Brien and the Coyotes.
That's right.
But
that would be the one.
Kind of an inconsequential game, big picture, for the Salt Lake Coyotes.
Well, and more on that in the show. It just when we look at these next 32,
that Leafs Canucks game Saturday.
Yep, that's a good call. That's a good call. That one was closer to some real jam too. So
okay.
That one.
Toronto, Arizona. So like 2 of 50.
Was one of the Philly games a little bit chippy?
Maybe a couple, maybe 3 or 4.
Konechny doing something.
I can't remember.
So
The Oilers, one of the Oilers games, that was McDavid Moore having.
that was the
outbursts.
second game of the season in
No, the
Edmonton.
third
Oh,
game.
the third game,
Third-
right?
The second game at Rogers
Okay.
Arena. Miller and McDavid.
Maybe I've been
were going
blinded
front
by
row.
all the winning, but it just those sorts of instances, those sorts of games haven't really stood out this year, or haven't been in great numbers. I think if you're talking to the coaching staff, you want every sort of variety of a playoff game that you can get between now and
Completely.
the end of April.
Yeah.
Like the really nasty one, the really tight checking, low scoring one.
It's unlikely to happen out of conference, though. Like, I doubt you'll see vitriol out of conference. And it's not impossible, but I don't think the next 4 here on the road are likely candidates outside of Boston wanting to use this as the same thing, as a playoff template for themselves. They might be in more desperate need for that right now than the Canucks, who continue to walk over the best teams in the league right now. Like, remember there was a time when people were like, oh, the Canucks have had an easy schedule. They're tops in the league because they've played all the bad teams. They've walked over every good team of late. Now, I think Boston might be using the Canucks as guys, are we ready for the playoffs? Let's test ourselves here. But in terms of going forward, I think you're going to see the Jets are struggling coming up on the 17th. You know, like that game could have some jam to it if the Red Wings are on the bubble again. You know, they've got 2 versus the Red Wings. I think the back half of the month presents bigger opportunity, obviously, with LA and Seattle and the Avalanche.
Yeah. It is National Girls and Women in Sports Day, and I want to shout out Ashley Stevenson of the Vancouver Canadians, who has been elected to the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame in St. Mary's, Ontario. There's a ceremony this summer, so congratulations to Ashley. We'll have more on Canada's women's basketball team, who have an enormous week ahead of them in hashtags.
That's every day in my house, by the way. Women in Sport Day.
Well,
driving over Hell's Half Acre with my girls to practices and such.
Blake got through 2 children who played sports, but it wasn't too demanding on mom and dad in terms of driving.
It was really
them
just my son we focused on early. My eldest didn't really play a ton of sports.
Right. And then the younger 2 came around, and one of them has turned into a national level field hockey player, and the other's a competitive hockey player.
Well, and field too. We only had 1 kid last weekend, and she played 6 games and had 1 practice over 2.5 days. It was a lot. So that's why I joke. Let's
get to today's menu, and it is brought to you by Seagram's VO Select Canadian Whiskey. Originally introduced back in the early 1900s, Seagram's VO was designed as a wedding gift from Joseph E. Seagram for his son. Barrel set aside in a warehouse specifically marked VO, the family's very own whiskey. Joseph E. Seagram liked it so much, put it on the market. The rest was history. Seagram's VO Select Canadian Whiskey, artfully blended, impeccably crafted. Make it your very own. We are going to talk to John Shannon coming up. We'll get to some hashtags, as mentioned, the best and worst of Twitter, including Hockey Canada taking a shot at the BCHL. Rob Williams, Rob the Hockey Guy, stops by. Some interesting topics with Rob, including a 2011 Bruin who wants to see the Canucks win a cup. There's some context there. And we'll talk some BC Lions as well after a busy day in CFL free agency.
Let's get to our best bets presentation of Sports Interaction, your homegrown sportsbook and casino. Want me to get started, or you have one?
Well, go ahead if you want.
It's waste management time.
Oh boy, wasted management time.
There's a bunch of guys that aren't there, but there's a bunch of guys that are.
Yeah,
and they could run roughshod. Scotty Scheffler is just ever present on the leaderboard these days. It actually isn't a great look for the PGA Tour, however present he is.
He won it a couple weeks ago, or a couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
So a mere top 5 placing for Scotty Scheffler pays out at 210. That just seems like you're exacting the tax. That seems like a no-brainer. 210 on Scheffler to be a top 5.
And of course, the famous 16th stadium hole. I saw a retrospective on Tiger's ace there in 1997. And Tony Finau.
Big billowy pants, too.
Remember, he raised the roof in celebration. Tony Finau, I think it was Tony Finau, might have been Max Homa, said, if you're going to get a hole in one, anywhere.
That
That's
would
the
be
spot to do it, right?
Or
And it just spoke
17.
to how cool Tiger was, right?
17 to TPC or that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Tiger was so pumped up. His playing partner was Omar Uresti, whose brother was his caddy. And Tiger is so pumped up. He said, I nearly broke Fluff's hand, his caddy at the time before Steve Williams, that Uresti's brother whispers to him, okay, just don't let him hurt your hand with the high five before the high five goes down. So Uresti sort of backpedals the hand for the high five. Tiger's going to play Riviera as a playing host coming up here in Los Angeles. So good to see him back on course. Best bet, Sports Interaction best bet. Rasheed Rice he's emerged as Kansas City's best wide receiver. I suspect that Travis Kelce is going to get a lot of attention in the red zone from the 49ers based on the postseason that he's having. I don't love the San Francisco corners, the good players, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of them gets beat. I also think the safeties might be a little susceptible to a play over the top. So I'm going to go Rasheed Rice, anytime touchdown score at pace 230.
Scan that code, folks. Get a 200% welcome bonus from Sekeres Price and Sports Interaction. Is your homegrown sports book and casino. Sports Interaction. Bet local. Must be 19 years of age, and please play responsibly.
John Shannon coming up next. Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a Ready Next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great.
My family's very own whiskey, barrel-aged and set apart, marked with VO, artfully blended, impeccably crafted, as a wedding gift to my son, for the bride and groom. And now, over a century later, from our very own family to yours, a legacy rooted in whiskey. Seagram's VO, growing deeper, reaching out, raising a glass to your legacy. Seagram's VO, make it your very own.
Hey, gang, if you're finding yourself a little directionless without purpose on a game night, may I recommend Greta. It's a great spot to catch the game throughout the season. They're at 50 West Cordova, so you're on foot. You're just walking to and from the game. It's a lot of fun. It's a go-to spot for food, drink specials, and fun before and after the game. They do have specials every day. They've got all-day happy hour on Wednesdays, and they've got all those arcade games to keep you busy as well. So make it a fun game night at 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar and Grill. Visit them at gretabar.com.
Joining us now is the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, the co-host of the Bob McCown podcast, the one and only John Shannon. Good day. How are you?
Happy Wednesday, boys.
Mm-hmm. What are you hearing on the trading market here, the deadline market, John? What's fascinating? Tell me something that came by John Shannon's radar here after All-Star Weekend since we last talked on Friday. Then we'll get into the game, which I'm sure you saw with Elias Lindholm staking his claim here.
But before I talk about trades, can you just imagine being and sitting beside Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin as he doesn't score one but scores two, right? And they turn and look at each other and go, I love it when a plan comes together. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
They must just be pinching themselves.
Really?
At the same time, they probably had a moment of panic because Kuzmenko scored first, of course, right? So there's a moment where they're like, I don't want to deal with the PR hit of this if Kuzmenko goes off for the and then their guy goes off and gets two. So
yeah, except Calgary's on the outside looking in, and Vancouver. I really think Flame fans are saying, well, hold on now. Zadorov's in Vancouver. And now Lindholm's in Vancouver, and is there a potential of a third Flame guy being in Vancouver? Why aren't we first in the Pacific? Why is Vancouver first in the Pacific? Why aren't we? And the answer to that, by the way, is that they're playing the right roles in Vancouver. Zadorov is a 5'6". He plays that role perfectly in Vancouver. Lindholm is a great second option after you look at what Pettersson and Miller and Besser do in Vancouver. So playing in the right position makes a huge difference for both of those players playing for the Canucks.
We'll get back to the game in a second, but the reason I asked you the deadline question and mentioned this on yesterday's show, it wasn't long ago, John. I think maybe our last hit before Christmas, where we were sort of bemoaning the fact that, okay, Columbus, Ottawa, and then Anaheim, San Jose, and Chicago, there may not be a lot of sellers come the deadline. Well, fast forward here to early February and a month away tomorrow from the deadline. Pittsburgh and Washington haven't made up much ground. Kuznetsov's now left the Capitals. Philly has lost their goaltender, and they're starting to take on water. Calgary has made a get-out trade. Doug Armstrong in St. Louis seemingly is always talking more about a larger plan in the future. You got Arizona that has fallen off the map here. Minnesota hasn't made up ground, and even Nashville with Barry Trotz, where you wonder, is he satisfied just to get in as the last wild card? Like, I'm sitting here wondering, could we have a buyer's market by March 8th?
We might, which is why it was fascinating to see both Vancouver and Winnipeg go shopping as quickly as they did. And I think two teams that you talked about probably deserve some more consideration. Philadelphia being one, because I think Danny Briere is one of those guys that knows that his team is built for the future or building towards the future. And Washington, I just don't know what Washington is anymore. Beyond trying to have Alex Ovechkin break Wayne Gretzky's record, there's not much there. And so you have to wonder if they have a healthy goalie that they can move. I have heard the name Charlie Lindgren a little bit around the NHL. Is he somebody that could provide a team with a quality backup goaltender? It's worth considering. So Washington, to me, I do not see Pittsburgh making any wholesale changes other than to try to find a little bit of help for the core. And then the big question there, of course, is Jake Gensel. Is what do you do with Gensel if you can't get him signed? And can you afford to sign him? That what's going on in Pittsburgh is an absolute fascination, because Kyle Dubas made the commitment to Sid Crosby to give this group one last kick at the can. And it hasn't paid off just yet. Might be early, but it hasn't paid off yet. And if you're going to try to build to the future, are you telling me Jake Gensel isn't part of that future? He's a very good goal scorer and a quality person and a quality player. And I can't imagine seeing him leave town at this point. But you know what? They've got lots of money committed to older players, the oldest team in the league. That, to me, is an interesting one.
Penguins and Devils are very much in it, though, aren't they? I mean, they've got games in hand on everybody above them. It'd be tempting, especially with the Devils being so injured and still hanging around. Now that they're getting a little healthier, you'd believe in yourself. And the Penguins, hey, you've got those guys. You'd have to believe in yourself too. And that goal differential is still showing me that that's a good team.
I mentioned the Penguins just because Dubas at one point cited the All-Star game as a signpost that he was going to look at. And so you're 5
Which
out.
he did every year he was in Toronto too, by the way. So, I mean, nothing changed for Kyle that way. The other thing about the Devils, guys, is know that Tommy Fitzgerald, who got a new contract not that long ago, has been basically given license to improve the club. And that, to me, is a huge, huge factor in what the Devils do. And both of them coming off pretty impressive victories on Tuesday night, Pittsburgh against the Jets and New Jersey without Jack Hughes against the Colorado Avalanche.
I'm going to bring up the late night game first to address the spectrum of the Canucks, because that late night game was something else, the Oilers and the Golden Knights. Now, the Canucks played a fabulous game too, a very playoffy game as well, but the other one was even more playoffy, I thought. And it gave
playoffy a word? Is playoff, or it is now?
It is now.
Okay.
I mean, I think Canucks fans have to be a little bit just realistic about what's coming up in the playoffs when you watch that late night game. Great that the Canucks dealt with a very hot Carolina Hurricanes team last night and held on with a gritty performance in the final couple of minutes. But man, I mean, if that's our first big schedule night coming out of the All-Star game, John, it looks like teams have decided, okay, it's time to play some real hockey here.
Everybody around the league has basically said the same thing in some form or manner, Blake, and that is it's going to be a grind between now and mid-April. Mm-hmm. It is going to be as close as we're going to get to playoff hockey, particularly in those divisional rivalries. I had a snicker after the game where people in Vegas were saying, well, we're so depleted. Well, did they have Eichel? No. Did they have Theodore? No. But when you can have a defense with Martinez, Pietrangelo, McNabb, and Whitecloud, you're going to be okay. And then Aiden Hill on top of that. Mm. That was as close to what we saw during the whole playoffs last year for the Golden Knights than we've seen all season. They will not give up. They are going to be relentless. We're going to see Edmonton, Vegas in the first round. That might be the best news for the Canucks.
Yeah. Let them beat each other up, right?
That might be the best news for hockey fans. That was an extraordinary game.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was, if you're an Oilers fan, it was frustrating at times because, did the big guns have opportunities? They had enough opportunities to win. Aiden Hill was great. I thought Stu Skeeter was really good too. I mean, it was a classic hockey game, and particularly to have one in Super Bowl week in Vegas when there are lots of outsiders going to the game. That was kind of cool.
And in terms of the Canucks in Carolina, it was a heck of a game too. I mean, we're sitting there talking about a heck of a game. Shots were 24-19. Carolina, a 3-2 game. Special teams the order of the day with regards to the goals, and yet Blake and I both talked about how that was different times last night. I mean, space was tight. There was some sloppiness because Carolina presses you so hard. And yet still an edge of the seat game where the Canucks blocked 4 shots in the final 90 seconds to secure the victory.
I think that line you used, space was tight, was true probably in 5 of the 8 games last night. There was tight checking. It was close. Winnipeg, Pittsburgh was similar. You get rid of the 5-minute major and the 2 power play goals. That's a 1-0 game. And Winnipeg did have enough opportunities to get the puck past Tristan Jarry. There are teams that have hunkered down now and are trying to focus on getting to the playoffs and preparing for the playoffs. And that's what we're going to see for the next 8 weeks.
It looked like Lindholm was pretty energized to be a Canuck. He was moving his feet and getting to those pucks and playing a tough game. I think both players in that trade last night felt like they were on new leases on life.
I think that's fair. I haven't watched Kuzmenko as closely as you have, but he's always got a smile on his face anyway. He's always a happy-go-lucky guy. So to be able to score a power play goal early on, I think will probably be a good thing for him with a Calgary team that really needs some offense. At the same time, I also think there was something kind of cool for Lindholm to play his first game for the Canucks in Raleigh, where he made his first impact. And, he may not be comfortable with his own teammates yet, but he would be comfortable in the environments of that arena. And that, to me, I think augured well for the Canucks. He looked so good. And by the way, name the forward for the Canucks that played the most minutes last night.
Didn't actually
didn't look that up.
Yeah.
Who you got?
Number 23.
Yeah.
He played more than Pettersson. He played more than Besser. He played more than Miller. He was the number 1 forward amongst all Canucks last night, which to me is a really good indication of his versatility for this hockey club.
Yep, played 21 minutes and 1 second to lead all Canucks.
Talk and trust him
forwards, and he was 5 of 10 in the face-off circle. You mentioned playoff.
Yeah, that's
hockey.
the other thing. Face-offs. If you can improve your face-off percentage at this time of year, you're going to do the right thing, and he's going to help with that too.
No, it's funny you mentioned playoff hockey having arrived because, one of the things it's a good thing it's going to be competitive at the very least at the top of the Western Conference, if not the Pacific Division. Like the Canucks are not free and clear in the Pacific Division, because if you're talking, your team is on quite a peak right now. You got 32 more to go. You're always worried, of course, about injury, but I think you also want to make sure you're peaking at the right time and don't feel like you're going through an exercise here at some point over the next 32 games. I think we saw that just as recently as last year with Boston, who was so free and clear that, the switch sort of, and the foot wasn't fully on the gas. And the next thing you know, here comes a plucky Florida Panthers team in the first round of the playoffs. To me, that's sort of one of the big things that Tocchet has to guard against over these next couple of months.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But I think if you sat with Rick and Adam and Sergey and Mike Yeo and said what needs to happen, they're still dealing with process. They're still dealing with making sure they play the right way every night. There is enough room for improvement all the time to allow this team to be pressured by the coaching staff, to be told, we're not there yet. And I think that's part of their success. What he has done, what the staff have done, is such an amazing job of pressing the right button at the right time. I guarantee you they loved that game last night, the coaching staff. They loved it. They loved every aspect of it. The contributions from the new guy, the defensive aspect, Zadorov's physical play. There were so many things that, I would describe as quote unquote playoff hockey that, now let's work on that. Let's hone that and see what happens the rest of the way. And by the way, Thursday in Boston, that'll be another good test because the Bruins were brutal last night.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's ask you our poll question then. For the Canucks, who would scare you most? Edmonton, Vegas, or nobody?
Both. Well, no, I listen, this is how tight the Pacific has become. When the season started, we, the world, including probably the three of us, had Edmonton and Vegas fighting for one. And they had, and I remember saying early, can the Canucks fight for a playoff spot? Certainly they can. But I did not expect them to be this. No one did. So when you look at what the Oilers have done with their turnaround, now winning 16 of their last 17, how's that? And then you look at what Vegas has done. And by the way, Vegas, I think, is 6-1-1 in their last 8. And we all think that they're banged up. These two teams can play playoff hockey. The Canucks can play playoff hockey. All I know is the first 2 rounds in the Pacific Division are going to be raucous. And we're going to lament the fact that, we're going to lose 2 good teams in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs coming out of this division.
Moving right along here. The Arizona Coyotes. Would they have the temerity to announce a relocation on Super Bowl Sunday, like to try and bury it as much as you can bury sports news? And what are you hearing? Because our friend Frank Saravelli's done some reporting here. It sounds like the Suns ownership group is not interested. So it doesn't sound like there's a local option there to buy and put the team in the basketball arena, which means new rink, which has all sorts of troubles, or we're moving on.
And Gary finally sounds exasperated by it, which is a huge bit of progress.
I think there's a lot of people at the board level that are exasperated. Let's remember, the other 31 owners have assisted this group to keep the team in Arizona. At a certain point, things change. At a certain point, rich people stay rich by saying we're not loaning money anymore. As an aside, this is what happened in Carolina too. Was at a certain point, Peter Karmanos was told, listen, pay us back or sell the team. Nobody will admit that, but that's exactly what happened. Do I think we're close to that? I don't know if we're close to that yet. Do I think there's a deadline? Yeah, I do. I think there is a deadline. I don't think it's this. I don't think it's this Sunday.
Yeah. Well, but they've blown through so many deadlines previously, John.
Yeah.
I mean, deadlines are almost, false.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. Two things occurred in the last 2 weeks that tell me that the end is near somehow, some way. When Marty Walsh, representing the players, says what he says about we can't play in a 5,000 seat arena, and Ryan Smith in Salt Lake City says we're ready and doors are open, we can do this because they have infrastructure with the NBA team and the MLS team there to help the corporate side and ticketing and all the other stuff, and they have an arena that can probably do 14.5 for hockey right now at the Delta Center. They don't do that without the commissioner's approval. That doesn't happen rogue. Ryan Smith did not go rogue. Marty Walsh did not go rogue. This, to me, is part of a strategy just to get it out there, to get discussions going, and to create awareness of what might happen before May 1st.
We'll see. God willing.
Lastly, in our ongoing discussion about media and how fans will consume the games going forward, ESPN, Fox, Warner Brothers combining their sports rights to launch a new streaming service, according to the Wall Street Journal. I have to give him credit because this is something he's been talking about for a while with us, Shannon, and that is it's probably too big an ask for all of them to ask every consumer. You've got to have some sort of centralization there, more of a one-stop shop, so that we're not being asked to sign up
$20 a month for 50
exactly
things.
For death by 1,000 cuts streaming service subscriptions. What do you make of that, and how do you think that's going to change the way we're going to watch the games going?
I don't think it will change the direction of where we're going. This is how this is trying to create a more level playing field with Apple and Amazon. And both of those are making forays into sports, and because they have such a huge footprint, not just in North America but around the world, they can create these types of conduits to the fan much easier. When you look at the size of what Apple TV is and the size of what Amazon Prime is, they make the other ones look small.
It dwarfs ESPN, which has been the worldwide leader, as we know, for years. But
and that's it. I mean, John makes
right.
a great point.
By the way, Blake, self-proclaimed.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
To me, this to amalgamate these three or four, who knows by the end of it, whatever it means, just is a logical conclusion to trying to compete against the guys who know how to stream better than anybody else.
Right. And customer acquisition going at it individually was going to be more difficult. And it's not just Apple, it's YouTube and their Sunday ticket deal. It's Amazon with Bally. So you're absolutely right, John. You're in the ring with some heavyweights, the likes of which you have not been in the ring with before. Yeah. So
I mean, you've got to be sitting in a boardroom in Bristol, Connecticut, or in New York City and be scared if those guys, and if Tim Cook at Apple decides he's going to spend a pittance of his money on rights fees, they can beat you up badly.
Yeah, and Bezos with Amazon too. I mean, it's not actually dissimilar from the Saudis going at the PGA Tour. We can lose money for a long time here, guys. Yeah, so you tell us how long you want to fight.
Here's what we need, though. Here's what we need, though. We need these guys to invest in podcasts.
We sure do. I love it.
Can you say that louder, please?
If you got a lead on that, Shannon, maybe we can bundle here with you. If you can land Bezos or you can land Cook, if you can get the meeting, Blake and I will make time. Title sponsorship is available here.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. Great stuff, John. Thanks for this. We'll catch up next week.
Have a great week, guys.
It's happy hour on Sekeres Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog is the Play Dead IPA.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
do that as well. Smash it right now.